Have you ever found yourself in total darkness? Now, I'm not talking about the kind of darkness you might encounter at your home when you get up in the middle of the night and, if you're not careful, you might stub a toe or bruise a shin because you forgot the layout of your furniture. No, I'm not talking about that darkness because, in fact, there always tends to be just a little bit of ambient light. And if you give your eyes long enough to adjust, you'll be able to make out the shapes. No, what I'm talking about is total darkness, where no matter how long you spend in it, you'll never be able to see. Well, I had the opportunity to experience that once in the Cave of the Winds in Colorado as part of their explorers tour called Caving 101. In that tour, you go deep into the bowels of the earth, not where they take the normal tours, following a guide with simply a headlamp or a flashlight. And at one point, after we had made many twists and turns, we stopped in a small cavern. And that's when our guide told us to turn out our flashlights. At that moment, we were immersed in total darkness. This was a darkness that had no light at all. You could hold your hand in front of your nose and hold it there for an hour, you'd still never be able to see it. That type of darkness disturbs you at your very core. It's quite unsettling. In today's gospel reading, Jesus calls us to be the light to the world, to let our light shine to dispel the darkness. He uses a second analogy. He says, "You are the salt of the earth, meant to season the world with God's will." But then he ups the ante, because he tells us if we are not seasoning the world, if we are not the light on the lampstand, then what worth are we? Like the salt that has lost its saltiness, we have no more value than to be thrown onto the road and trampled underfoot. Pretty harsh words from a loving teacher, but that's exactly what he says. He says that because he is telling us that being the light in the darkness is a non-negotiable. It's not something that's nice to do as a disciple of Jesus Christ. It is at the very core of how we as disciples are called to live our life. Now, his two analogies are very, very important: light and salt. Because those are two things that don't exist to draw attention to themselves, but exist as a reference point to draw attention to something else. In my early career, and many of you know, I've had a lot of iterations in my life. I worked in theater in San Francisco. And one of the things we said about good lighting design is that what it accomplished was to draw your attention to the action on the stage and through the colors used to enhance the mood. And that great lighting design is never noticed. In fact, the only time when people are leaving the theater that they tend to talk about lighting design is when it's been bad. That it's been too dark to see the action, or sometimes just a little too bright. Or maybe the colors used were wrong and it was at odds with the scene being played out in front of it. The purpose of light is to draw your attention to something else. And the same is true with salt, for you cooks out there. You know that the purpose of salt is to enhance the flavor of a dish, to bring out the natural flavors, to make them brighter. And if it's missing, then the dish can fall flat. And if there's too much, well, then all you taste is the salt, and you just want to throw the dish out. There's one exception to that, by the way. It's popcorn. I am convinced that popcorn only exists as a vehicle to put salt into my mouth. But in general, except for popcorn, the purpose of salt is to draw your attention to something else. And that's exactly what we are called to do in being salt and light. We are to let our good deeds shine before others, that they may be seen, so the glory is given to the Father. Now, you see, there's a lot of people in society today, a lot of philanthropists that are doing some great things. They're doing very, very good work. But oftentimes, what that work does is draw attention to the do-gooder, to the philanthropist. It becomes for their honor and for their glory. But that's not what you and I are called to do. We are called to do our good works in such a way that the glory goes to God. You see, when we feed the hungry or take care of the needs of the poor, it is not about us. It's about demonstrating God's love for every one of his children. And when we speak or march in support of life from conception to natural death, we are not taking a political stand. We're reminding the world of the sanctity of the life that God created. And when we welcome the immigrant, we're not embracing anyone's immigration policy or turning our back on national defense. What we are doing is respecting the fact that every one of us, no matter what country we are in, is an equal child of God. This is how we are to act, in a way that shows God's light and God's love in the world. But sometimes the world can seem like a very dark place. And we wonder if we can make any difference. What is my one light able to do? So back to the cave in Colorado. After we sat there for a few minutes, realizing we never were going to be able to see, our guide lit a single match. And with the lighting of that tiny little flame, we could make out the contours of the cavern and recognize the people around us. Let me give you an example with salt. Any fans of Top Chef? Yeah, me too. There's an episode a couple of weeks ago where one of the chef-testants, Casey, was told that she had made one of the best and most complicated dishes that had been served that day, except for one thing. It was under-seasoned. And one of the judges said that one flake of salt on that dish would have turned it from one of the worst dishes to one of the best dishes. One flake of salt, one match struck, can make a difference in providing that reference to the love of God in the world. So yes, our individual actions can and do make a difference. Now, the other day I was driving with a friend of mine, and we passed someone on the street, homeless, with a sign. And she looked at me and she said, "What are we supposed to do in those cases?" Now, first of all, like me, she never carries cash. Cash has kind of become for me a thing of the 20th century. But she said even if she did, she wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do, because how does she know that that cash would help someone? So then we discussed one of the great trends that we're seeing right now in the help of our poor brothers and sisters. And that is the care packages that are being created for the homeless. So that people now are creating small packs of items that are necessary to help people who live on the streets or are poor. So instead of giving cash, this is what you can provide them, knowing that it will really benefit them. And as I researched this, I found a great saying and a great additional thought from the Portland, Oregon Rescue Mission. Because they said not only is it good to give someone something, but when you do, take a moment, make eye contact with them, offer a smile, because that individual has probably been ignored by hundreds or thousands of people that week. And they said as long as you're not on the road blocking an intersection, maybe you want to have a brief conversation or say a prayer with them as a way to recognize their humanity. That's what one individual can do. But as much as we can do as individuals, there is power in numbers when we unite our lives together. So in the cave, after the match burned out, then our guide asked us to one at a time turn our flashlights back on. And as each light was added, so grew the intensity of the illumination. And by the time we left that cave, we had sufficient light so that none of us would stumble on the path. And you and I, in our parish and in our communities, have an amazing way and so many opportunities to unite our light. Right here in Most Precious Blood, our Care and Outreach Committee gives dozens of opportunities every year, including today with the Super Bowl, where we are asked to bring canned goods to help our soup kitchens, help our food pantries around the area. And by the way, you get to vote for your favorite team. I'm not going to say who mine is. I don't want to tick off half the congregation. So we have the opportunities in our parish to join together to shed God's light. But sometimes we can have even more impact if we reach beyond that. For all the Catholics of the Orlando Diocese, we will be given the opportunity this month to determine how we wish to participate in, contribute to our Catholic Appeal, the annual diocesan appeal. And by doing that, we partake in works and support works that no one parish could ever do. By joining with the 90 parishes and missions within the Orlando Diocese, then we are able to support the good works of Catholic charities who feed the poor and help the homeless get back on their feet. We are able to support 37 Catholic schools in our diocese that allow us to form and share the faith of the next generation. We are able to train seminarians, deacon candidates, and lay catechists so they may lead and form the over 400,000 Catholics in our diocese. And we are able to support those new immigrants to our country that need to be set up in a way so they can be successful members of our society as well. So that is another great way that we can join our light together. And sometimes we're called to reach even wider. Last Saturday, 20 members of this community went to visit the Islamic Center in Sanford to try to increase understanding. And in doing so, we came to the realization that both of our faiths are called to share the love and mercy of God with the world. And in that excitement, that new light that dawned, we agreed that we would now look for ways to partner together to bring God's mercy and love into the world in Central Florida and to stand as a shining example together. So individually, in our parish, in our community, you and I are called to share our light, to be that salt that seasons the world with God's love and mercy. Today we have two sets of parents that are here, bringing their children into the next step on their faith journey. Well, that's your goal as well. You are to share God's light with your children, with your sons, and support them in sharing their light. That is the call of every one of us as a Christian disciple. We have a choice, as we always do. We have that free will to either follow the path of the disciple or reject it and be trampled underfoot. My brothers and sisters, let us share our good deeds, that women and men will see our good works and glorify our Heavenly Father.